Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Walter Dial, tax partner at Gelman, Rosenberg, and Friedman, CPAs here in Bethesda, Maryland. Our mission here on the podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building transferable business value and planning for your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you exit successfully and then on your own terms and conditions. At the end of the year, December 2019, Congress passed the Secure Act, or the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement Act, as part of the government appropriations bill for fiscal 2020. President Trump signed the bill December 20th, 2019, which is considered by many to be the most significant retirement legislation in many years. And that's our topic for today, today's episode. How does the Secure Act serve and impact business owners? Passage of the Act absolutely provides small business owners and their businesses with some advantages, such as these: the ability to band together or join together to offer retirement plans, increased lifetime income offerings, new enrollment, and tax changes to boost worker savings. The Act, of course, is meant to encourage you, the business owner, to offer retirement plans, and following are some of the ways in which your employees will benefit when you do that. Number one, as of 2020 tax year, if you have earned income, you may continue to put money in your traditional IRA regardless of your age. Under the old rules, you'll remember that you had to stop at age 70 and a half. Now you can keep going if you want to. Number two, retirement investors can now stay invested longer. The Act also increases the age at which individuals must begin taking required minimum distributions from an IRA or workplace retirement plan account. The age has been extended to age 72 from age 70 and a half under the old rules. So you can stay invested longer. You don't have to start taking money out as soon. And then number three, if you, the employer, offer an automatic enrollment with an escalation feature under your retirement plan, the amount withheld from your employee's earnings could increase every year after the first year that they're enrolled until they reach 15% or their eligible compensation. That's compared with the maximum of 10% under the old rules. But today, those are benefits to your employees. Today, though, of course, we want to focus on the benefits to you, the business owner. And so, Walter, as we like to do whenever possible, let's begin with the tax-related changes afforded by the Secure Act, the new safe harbor, tax credits, extending the deadline for plan adoption. Just talk to us about that, if you would, for a few minutes, the tax-related changes and benefits to the business owners.
Thanks, Pat. One thing I want to point out just before we dive into the business aspects, one of the big negative implications of this new legislation is that the stretch IRA has basically been done away with. So you may recall, if you inherited an IRA, you were able to draw that money out generally over your lifetime, which, if you left your IRA to a younger person, that could be 30, 40, 50 years. This legislation does away with the stretch IRA and instead gives you a 10-year period to take the money out. So, I would just encourage our listeners to revisit their estate plans in this regard because of the fact that the stretch IRA is not as generous as it was. IRA assets become really good assets to look at if you're planning on leaving something to charity. So definitely revisit your estate planning, which we would encourage you to do pretty much any time there's major legislation, but this one could definitely have a direct impact on your estate plan. So, Pat, let's go ahead and dive into the business provisions. A couple of the simple ones. There's a $500 tax credit for businesses who adopt a 401k or a simple plan. So that's, helps a little bit with the setup costs.
Yeah, and it's a credit, not a deduction.
Right, so that's like getting $500 back, which is nice. You kind of hit upon the new safe harbor rules, and what we're basically talking about there is you could have a safe harbor plan, and you were allowed to have qualified automatic contribution arrangement for up to 10%. That meant basically your employees were automatically enrolled in the plan. They had to opt out, which is a really good way to encourage employees to participate, because oftentimes, kind of like all of us, we tend to put things off, and if we have to do something, we tend not to do it. Well, if that's the case, when the default was that you're not going to be a participant, that's what ended up happening. Now you can actually automatically enroll people, and they have to take the affirmative action to not be enrolled. So I think that's really a benefit, because as we all know, it's a lot easier to save money if you never get it in your pocket. So having money come out of your paycheck directly is a fantastic way to save money. What I think is probably the best provision for our clients, which are generally smaller businesses, 5 to 20 million, but we also have a lot that are even less than 5 million, is the fact that the deadline for adopting a plan has been extended. So it used to always be that you had to have your plan in place by the end of the year. You didn't have to have it funded, but you had to have it in place by the end of the year in order to make a contribution in the first part of the following year that would count back to the previous year. And oftentimes, a client may be consistently losing money because they're in a startup phase, so they've really never thought about a retirement plan. All of a sudden, boom, they got a bunch of income, but we're not aware of what's going on until after the year ends. Well, in that situation, the owner really had no option other than to implement a SEP plan, a SEP IRA. And SEP IRAs are okay, but they have certain limitations regarding vesting and the limits on the amount that you can actually contribute. So with the Secure Act, you can now actually install a 401k after the end of the year, as long as it's done by the time your tax return is due.
And that includes if you file an extension.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And then that contribution would then count against your prior year income. So I think that's a really good feature, and that's probably the feature we'll see most of our clients taking advantage of. There are some more complicated provisions. One has to do with something that's called a multiple employer plans, or MEP. And the way this worked, and it was very I didn't have a single client who participated in it.
Really? Is that right? So you've never had a client, all your business clients never participated in an MEP?
No, my understanding is that a lot of these situations are more for kind of more blue-collar companies like manufacturers and stuff who have lots of employees. So having a plan would be very expensive and also open the owner up to a lot of liability. But by being able to join in a MEP, they get to spread out the costs, so it reduces their share of the costs. It also reduces the overall liability. So you wouldn't see that as much, in the Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland area. One of the big drawbacks before the Secure Act to these MEPs was that you'd be put in a group. For number one, you could only form groups where you had something in common, like maybe an industry or something like that. So some companies were hesitant to do that because they didn't want to be tied in with their competitors. Number two, if one member of the group did something that was in violation of ERISA, the entire group got penalized.
Yeah, that's the one bad apple.
Yeah, exactly. So there's been two changes to the MEP rules. One is you no longer have to have something in common, so that's good. And number two, the one bad apple rule has gone away, so you can't be held liable if one member of the group does something that's a violation of ERISA rules. But again, like I said, I don't think many of our clients and many of the listeners are going to be that interested in MEPs, but it is nice to know that Congress is responding to complaints about them and trying to make them better.
Walter, the Act also has provisions designed to encourage employers to offer lifetime income annuities as options within the retirement plans. How's that work?
Yes, that's a very interesting provision. It probably has something to do with the fact that the insurance people have got the world's greatest lobbying arm. It's really just amazing the things they can get through Congress. But at any rate, plan administrators have always been very hesitant to put annuities in plans because they really felt they were opening themselves up to a lot of liability because, annuities are guaranteeing or promising lifetime income. And if for some reason, the annuity is not financially secure, that could come back as a lawsuit against the employer. So they've been very, very hesitant to put annuities into retirement plans. And, some financial planners argue that annuities aren't great for financial plans, or not for financial plans, but for retirement plans. But I think, it's like everything. It's very hard to just make blanket statements that say things are good or bad. Every person's circumstance is different, and annuities can make sense for people even within 401ks. But what the Secure Act does is it provides a safe harbor protection for the employer. So as long as they follow certain procedures in assessing and selecting the annuity provider, they have got protection from liability in case something goes wrong with that particular provider. So that was really the big change. I'm not sure how many people are going to go ahead and add annuities to their plan, but I think most plan providers that we work with, and most employers that we work with, they like to give their employees every option that's available. So I would assume that we'll begin to see annuities pop up in 401ks. Do you agree with that? What's your feeling about that?
Yeah, I think there's confusion around annuities, and it depends on your financial advisor too, I think, because some financial advisors are real, they think annuities are fantastic and others don't want to have anything to do with them.
Right.
And so it probably depends on the leaning of your financial advisor as well, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So we've talked about more time to save, staying invested longer, starting your retirement planning sooner. There's also some benefits in regard to using 529 plan assets to help pay student debt. In the past, this would be a benefit not to the employer so much, but to the employee. In the past, using assets in a 529 account to help pay student loans would have been treated as a non-qualified distribution, resulting in taxes on any earnings and a 10% additional federal tax. Now you can use up to a lifetime limit of $10,000 from the 529 to pay student loans for the beneficiary of the plan or a sibling of the beneficiary. The lifetime max applies to each one of them individually. You might want to check with your advisor, for instance, on that. How can I balance my debts with the need to save for retirement or other long-term goals? More education expenses covered, and another key 529 plan development. Students who enroll in registered and certified apprenticeship programs, I get excited about this, previously not considered qualified higher education expenses under the old rules, may now use their 529 plan distributions to cover qualified expenses such as books, supplies, equipment, expanding the list of qualified education expenses for your children. Could help preserve the parents' ability to save and invest for their own retirement. And then also, you mentioned the charities, giving to charities. For years, taxpayers have been able to, Walter, satisfy or reduce their obligation to take the required minimum distributions by giving up to $100,000 directly to charities. You want to talk about that a little bit and the changes there?
That's a good point, Pat, because there's a little bit of confusion because, the rule we're giving to charities was that you had to be at the age where you're taking your RMDs, which prior to this legislation was age 70 and a half. But now the RMDs, you can wait until age 72. But the Secure Act did not change the age when you can begin making qualified gifts to charity. So you can still do that at age 70 and a half.
Yeah, so a good question for your advisor there might be, what are some tax-efficient ways to give to the causes that you care about? And how can you direct distributions to multiple qualified charitable organizations from your IRA?
And I think, Pat, just one overall point for our listeners, it's important to attract and keep good employees. So anything you can do towards that end is going to bring value to your company. So this is just another area where the Congress is trying to make it a little bit easier for companies to install retirement plans. So I would just encourage our listeners to revisit that aspect of their benefit package and make sure that they're up to date with competition as far as what they're offering their employees.
Yeah, that's a great point, Walter. And so as we wrap up here, is there anything else that, particularly in light of business owners, is specifically pertaining to business owners, that we need to cover that we haven't covered?
I don't think so. I would just mention again, it might be a good time to take a look at your estate plan, and you should also be in touch with your plan provider, because you're going to have to do some updates to your plan probably. Yeah,
your plan provider, maybe your financial advisor, and maybe your tax advisor.
Definitely.
Okay. All right, good. So that's a wrap on the Secure Act. If you'd like to reach out to either Walter or myself regarding building the value of your business or planning your exit, you can reach Walter at 301-951-9090 or me at 301-859-0860. You can also access a free exit readiness assessment or sellability score assessment at innislp.com, and other resources as well at exitreadiness.com and grfcpas.com. Until next time on the Exit Readiness Podcast, this is Pat Ennis and Walter Dial signing off.